Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Batman Season 1, Episodes 1 through 3. I went on and specifically watched the third episode because I like Man-Bat. For some reason, I like this character more than the other rogues gallery, and I really think the main reason why I enjoy him is because I don't feel like he's been used enough. Like, a lot of times he'll be in the Arkham games as a character that at some point somewhere down the road scares the crap out of you in the Arkham games as they're kind of climbing up this one building, and Man-Bat is right there scaring the crap out of you, as well as like right around that part of the game, we also have a number of things that would be a little bit more uneasy, and you're like, whoa, okay, all right. Because Joker is to be like your imaginary friend through most of that game, and he just kind of pops out of nowhere at some point, and you're just like, but anyways, so. But also, I went on and I went to watch this series simply because I've consistently been watching this YouTube channel called the Noob Reviews, which actually has a YouTuber on it that I thought was really great. Like, I like her personality, and like there were some books that I really did enjoy. There, of course, was some Batman Death in the Family in there, like the original story, as well as like some Flash annuals, and there was some Thor mixed in there, and there's a number of other things. Eventually, she's gonna go on and do some Indiegogo, and so I just thought that was like, all right, like this is really cool. This is really interesting kind of approach for comic book reviews. So, like while like we were just kind of talking and whatever, all of a sudden it seemed that like animated series came up through a conversation, and eventually like she had mentioned a certain number of series, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I haven't seen Batman the animated series in a while, so like, how would I just go on and just kind of check that out now? Because I of course remembered like, oh yeah, like I've seen that or I've seen this but yeah. So with that said, I'm gonna give credit where credit's due. Check out the Noob Reviews. I'm gonna give a link in the description down below to hope that you want to go on and check out the Noob Reviews. Check out a channel that reviews comic books, as well as possibly a number of other things, maybe somewhere down the road. Who knows? But with that said, I think I'm gonna go on and talk about Batman the Animated Series. I'm sorry about that long stretch of talk, of lead up, of whatever. But so, like, Batman the Animated Series, honestly, like, I remember having the action figures as a kid. I would probably much more remember watching kind of the later, like, Batman and Robin kind of series going on, and eventually, like, the big thing that I remember the most is probably when like the Justice League series happened. Like that I remember a lot more. Those episodes are much more fleshed out in my brain because my life becomes a blur and I tend to forget like a lot. And then some of which that I have to remember a boatload of stuff, and so eventually some faculties or something will be completely forgotten about. But anyways, so yeah, so like the Batman the animated series like must have been a real fun part of my childhood. Eventually liking a lot of the visuals. I think like the Batmobile was the obvious like winner for that series because I thought it was so cool, and I thought it was such a long stretch Batmobile, and that was so cool. But so we go into these 3 episodes, and the first 2, of course, are to heavily showcase Catwoman, and then in the third episode is to showcase Man-Bat. Again, just even eventually when Man-Bat is to kind of look goofier and uglier and whatever through a lot of other iterations, still, I just kind of like him because he's this kind of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of character, and I always kind of like those, where it's like man turns into monster, and those were always kind of cool for me to really just enjoy. So, uh, it's kind of sad that eventually, like, the animated series did have to eventually stop simply because they were trying to appeal to a much more kid-like audience, and so they added Robin in, and then Robin came like to be like a much more like focused character, and eventually it tried to really continue to market for kids, and then eventually at some point like Batman just continued to change throughout time and eventually became like either the Batman or a number of other things. At some point it just eventually went off to eventually be incorporated in the Justice League and the Justice League Unlimited, where like that's where like I would mainly uh like really remember Kevin Conroy's version of Batman. So with that said, yeah, like the first two episodes are to be showcasing Catwoman and Red Claw, and like I said, the third episode is to showcase Man Bat and his story. So with that said, let's just go on into like just go into spoilers, because I feel that anything that I'm really to go on and say about these episodes in the tee up way of things is really not going to give me much as far as spoilers go. It's like every episode is 20 minutes, and so I did the first three to just kind of go on and eventually just talk about this series, because going back into it, I'm like this is why like I probably enjoyed this as a kid. Like it's very dark and very like the stories are really interesting. Like I think even as an adult you can still enjoy this series. So with that said, let's go into double five this bad boy up, because I think it's about that time to just go into what is normally to be called spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this 3 episodes. So we go on into the beginning of episode 1. And so for the first episode, we of course have Catwoman, who is going on and using her claws to open up this window for her cat to slip in. And so we have kind of Batman prowling the rooftops, going on and realizing that I guess the cat burglar that he has known so much about, he is to go on and find out that this person is none other than an actual woman. It seems like there's going to be some surprises of a lot of people thinking like, oh, this is some guy, and then turn around, it's a woman. Wow, what a massive surprise that will be. It shouldn't matter. Like, freaking, like, a lot of these women look freaking, like, hot anyways, so it's win-win. So, we go on and we have, Iris, who of course is Catwoman's cat, who is going and picking up these pearls and this necklace of sorts. And so Catwoman is like, aha, like I got this necklace. And then come to turn around and Batman is right there like, oh, hi. Hey, I'm here. You're going to probably try to run now, right? So we go on and we have it to where Catwoman is consistently trying to run away from Batman, and we go on and we have it to where like Batman is matching her or is to be ahead of her, consistently figuring out where she's going. So Catwoman at one point is to think that she like is to run fast enough to where she's to be far too ahead of Batman, and then Batman just plops right there and he's like, oh yeah, like no, like I'm right here, like hey, like. And so we go on and have it desperately where Catwoman is trying to scale this one fire escape, and Batman is just slowing down and be in front of the fire escape, saying like, yeah, you're not going to get away from me. And so Catwoman slips by, eventually kind of dropping a bunch of trash cans on Batman. And so Catwoman runs off and is to realize that Iris is stuck in the street and the cat may be run over. And we go on and we have it to where Batman is to be running into the road, grabbing Iris, saving her, and we have Catwoman who's to blow this cat whistle, and then it's to blow a kiss to Batman, thanking him for going on and saving this cat. We're going to go on and have Catwoman at a lot of times just kind of blowing kisses to people, and most of the time that's Batman, but it is what it is with this story. So, because we go on and we have better things to do in this story, we transition and have now this Gotham Gallery ball place where they are auctioning off eligible bachelors. And what eligible bachelor would they be auctioning off first? I guess that would be Bruce Wayne. So we have this auctioneer that is like, Bruce Wayne, don't be shy, come on up here. So Bruce Wayne is to make his way to this podium, and we have the bidding starting off like $500, and I'm sure like Bruce Wayne could just be like, dude, I wipe my butt with $500. Like, come on. Like, I'm a millionaire here. Come on, this is for charity. Like, come on. Like, so while Bruce is making his way up to this podium, we of course have all these women that are like, oh my god, it's Bruce Wayne. Ha! They're just like, they're so like, yeah, like, I saved every penny for you, Bruce. And Bruce is like, okay, that's great. We'll see about that. So we go on and we have Bruce, who's kind of hearing these women just kind of like, 500, 600, 700, 800, 1,000. And all of a sudden we have one person in the far back who is saying $10,000. And we have like, okay, ladies and gentlemen, going once, going twice, sold to the lady in the back. Come to find out, Bruce is to find that the woman back in the back is the Selina Kyle. And so really, Selina is to immediately let Bruce off the hook because she is to want to have donated a ton of money to this charity anyways, and she's just kind of letting Bruce slide. But Bruce is like, no, like, I'm an honorable man, like, it seems like you're an honorable woman, like, hey, let's really go on and do this date, like, let's arrange something. And Selina's like, I like this guy. And so we go on and we have, of course, Selina, who introduces her secretary or her assistant, who's called Maven. And so Maven is going on and telling Selina, it's like, well, hey, we can really use this guy. Like, this guy is like rich and everything like that. Like, we gotta, maybe we can use his influencer and help us out. So Selina's like, you know what, I'll go on and I'll have that lunch, Mr. Wayne. So all of a sudden it seems that Selina and Maven are hearing some kind of noise upon the outside of this auctioned place. And come to find out, we are to have Bruce also hear this noise also, to the point of him disappearing like freaking Houdini. And even though Houdini was much more of an escape artist still, we go on and we have Bruce, who of course is to quickly change into Batman, because we have a truck filled with military weaponry that of course is like U.S. Army and stuff like that on these containers, or on these wooden boxes. And so we have this man who is blasting away on this weapon to eventually ford off all these police officers that are on this chase. So we go on, we have Batman coming in, and so at first he is trying to go on and break into this vehicle and try to get them to stop, but then he seems to come up with some other way to create some kind of roadblock which kind of stops these people dead in their tracks. So Commissioner Gordon is going on and meeting up with Batman. It seems that Bullock, who we normally kind of see in here, Harvey Bullock, we see him quite often, especially, we probably, I think, see him a lot more in Gotham than we probably do at some points here, but eventually he'll become a more prominent character. But so, like, we don't see Bullock in this first episode, but I think we end up seeing him kind of more so in the third episode than any of the other ones. But anyways, so we go on, and in this part here, we have Batman exchanging information with Commissioner Gordon, and it seems that Commissioner Gordon is to find out that these guys were to have been working with a guy named Red Claw. We normally have Commissioner Gordon, I guess, assume that this is some dude, and we'd find out the exact opposite of that all. So we go on and we have it to where neither one of these guys are to have intel about Red Claw, but that's not going to stop Batman from trying to get some. And eventually Batman is to disappear away like he always does. So we transition into the very next day. So we go on and we have Selina Kyle that is just pining away over Batman, and the last thing she really wants is to see Bruce Wayne coming to her place, wanting to put together a date, and come to find out this would actually benefit Selina, because Bruce Wayne is to come in here with some flowers, and Selina's like, oh, what a nice gesture, and so on and so forth. And so we go on, we have it to where Maven is to be on the phone with, I guess, a lawyer or an attorney named Martin, and come to find out that it seems that Selina had lost this deal with trying to buy off this land for all these lions, because it seems that Mr. Stern, who is to be a CEO of Multigon, is to want to buy up this land to eventually put some golf courses or just some like things that eventually would really not make sense to have them be building this stuff there, because like it's like, well, this land doesn't make sense to have like a golf course and all these things here. Like, it makes much more sense to just have this for these lions. But Mr. Stern is firm. But anyways, we'll get to that. So we go on and we have it to where after Selina is to have grabbed this phone away from Maven, is telling her attorney or her lawyer, do whatever he needs to do. If that means like coming down there and giving people what for and all that kind of stuff, that's what he's gonna have to do. So all of a sudden, Selina Kyle is to now just throw herself on this couch and be like, Bruce, like, I don't think I'll be any good to you for this date, like, unless you can go on and give me the CEO of Multigon. And Bruce is like, well, hey, like, let me pick up the phone. When are you going to be busy next? And Selina Kyle's looking at Maven, and she's like, wow, like, this guy knows how to get things done. So we then go on and have it, of course, where both Selina and both Bruce are to make their way to this Multigon company. And so we go on here and we have both of them that are to eventually make it to Multigon's company, and Mr. Stern is talking to them. And we have, of course, Mr. Stern that is very firm that he needs to use all of this land for a bunch of golf courses and all these kind of resorts and all. So, like, this guy is to be playing this piano of Ode to Joy, and is to have a whole model planted out of what all he wants to use the land for. And I'm like, that's always just classic Batman. You always have to have some big, lavish model that you have to show people what this land is going to look like. And, like, I don't know how many times that I've always seen that through, like, a lot of Batman books where we have Batman who goes on and is to show you, like, well, hey, this is what I imagine Gotham would look like, but, here's just a hologram of what all I'm thinking. So especially I think when we have what's Gotham to be to Bruce, I think especially in that Rebirth series where he has that whole monologue at the beginning of every book or whatever, it's just kind of weird to have a whole huge monologue because we have to waste panels and time with that. Anyways, pushing on. So we have it to where, of course, Selena is doing all the talking here, and Bruce is to really all he has to say, word edgewise, is really just like, well, hey, hope you have a nice day. I'm going to leave here because Selena Kyle is like on a tear. And so Selena Kyle is mentioning, like, well, I need the land for these lions. And we have it to where, of course, Dr. Stern is like, well, like, we'll find another location for these lions, but like, we need this land. And so Selena is threatening Mr. Stern that, like, hey, I have all kind of animal activists all over the world that's going to come here and watch over what you do with a microscope. And if you mess up, like, oh, like you'll have something to pay. So we go on and we have Selena and we have Bruce who leaves and they're getting into the car. And so we again have it to where, of course, Selena is telling Bruce, it's like, you know what, like, can we just go on and just have a rain check? And Bruce is like, you know what, like, that's fine, but I still want this date. Like, whenever we can still have this date, I would love to just have lunch. Like, let's just do that. And Selena's like, okay, like, I'll like we'll live up to that promise. So so we go on and Selena's saying, like, well, yeah, I guess I'm going to be working, like, really late tonight. And Bruce is like, well, I'm going to be working really late tonight, too. And so it's like, that obviously is code for both of them are going to go on and do something shady. But again, still, neither one of them know that Batman is Bruce Wayne and Catwoman is Selena Kyle. But eventually, when we get into the episode of the second episode, we'll go on and have Batman, who is putting some things together. Because, of course, in the time of which where Batman was to go on and rescue Isis, he was to have this little kind of fur that had left on his suit. And so he had kept that fur. And so eventually, I believe within the second episode, when Bruce is going to be spending more time with Selena, we have Alfred, who is to go on and find this other thing of fur that, of course, was from this cat instead of from Selena. And then Bruce is to make the connection of, like, well, like, Bruce wouldn't know, but Batman would. And so he realizes that Selena Kyle is Catwoman within the second episode. Spoilers, but we'll get there. So we go on and we have it to where Bruce is to go on and shake down some thugs and is to eventually be like holding up one of these thugs like, where is Red Claw, where is she? And we have it to where, of course, this thug is to give up information. And so saying that she, of course, is to be tied with Multigon, as we, of course, had seen Red Claw with Mr. Howard after both Bruce Wayne and, of course, Selena Kyle are to leave this office. We have Mr. Stern, who is going on and talking to Red Claw, and Red Claw is like, like, we have to figure out a way to eliminate these characters because we need that land. So we go on and we have Catwoman while Batman is doing the shakedown, trying to find this information. We have Catwoman who is going on and getting back to Mr. Stern's office. So we go on and we have Catwoman who is to realize that this guy had played this Ode to Joy little piano to trigger this one like model of what he was going to use this land for. And so we go on and we have Catwoman is like, well, it's a good thing that I had piano lessons when I was a kid. So we have Catwoman who continues to play the song, and it seems that more and more get released as far as these secret hiding locations. And eventually, another thing that ends up getting like revealed behind this bar is this computer that has a safe that quickly opens up for Catwoman to go on and be like, oh, okay, let me go through all this really important information that I can just go and take pictures of. So while Catwoman is going on and doing that, we of course have it to where Red Claw is to be telling all of her men like what her next plan is, that she's going to go on and try to find this military train and steal this viral plague, and then is to probably hold the city for ransom or the world for ransom, because that's always the generic plan for every villain in every single story. So all of a sudden, while Red Claw is presenting her whole plan of what is to eventually happen here, all of a sudden there is an alarm that is set off, and they find that Catwoman is looking through all this information. So we go on and we have it to where Red Claw's thugs are going on to eventually go after Catwoman. Catwoman is going through these ventilation shafts. She's eventually making her way to the roof, where eventually we have Catwoman who is to be fired upon, and eventually Red Claw and all this stuff is to happen, to where now we have Catwoman who is seemingly falling to her death. Oh no! If only Catwoman would have this kind of weird whip that eventually she would like latch onto something and be able to just swing. But like really, I guess we don't have that kind of Catwoman that is to do that kind of thing in this series quite yet, or maybe at some point she will get this weapon at some point. So Batman comes flying in, swooping in, grabbing Catwoman, and of course now Catwoman is to be kissing on Batman, and Batman's like, all right, like, okay. So we have to again thank Batman for the saving of not only Iris, but now we have it to where, of course, Selena Kyle is now saved. So we now have Batman that is really tempted to just want to go on and unmask Catwoman right here, and Selena Kyle's like, no, like let's leave some stuff up to the imagination, but Bruce is to want to turn this woman in, and so like Selena is to try to get out of that, and so we go on, and as Catwoman is to make a way from Bruce, we go on and at the end of this have Catwoman make it back to her place, and we have a guy watching over her that is like, I'm gonna get you, like I'm gonna come for you when you least expect it. So that of course is to I think that mostly covers most of episode 1, so let's get into episode 2. So in the beginning of episode 2, we have all this stuff that has happened, and all this stuff that is to have been a thing. So now in episode 2, we have Batman, who is, again, having an informant that is to give him information about this military train, as he's finding this guy nearby this kind of like tunnel like location. So like right by this kind of hill or this mountain or whatever. So we have Batman who goes to Commissioner Gordon and is telling the intel of what he has to have gotten about this whole train. And Commissioner Gordon's like, well, hey, I haven't gotten any information about any train. What are you talking about? And so Batman is thinking like, well, this might be a special like military train that you aren't to be given information of. Maybe this is a classified train. And Gordon is like, yeah, like freaking the military that like doesn't bother to tell me things, and like it's information that I need to know. So we go on and we have Batman that again disappears off to of course make his way into and I think there's also like a moment in this episode where you have like Batman who calls Commissioner Gordon and is kind of letting him know what's going on. I think this is right after the car accident where he like calls calls Commissioner through this phone, and is to let him know what's going on at some point in this episode, but I probably will forget that immediately. So, but I know it happens through one of these 3 episodes. So we go on, and we have this military train where we of course have one guy who is to always have the moan and groan complaint about like, well, hey, when I went on and enlisted, I didn't think I'd be doing a job like this. Like, we always have those kind of like scaredy cat like guys that are like, oh, what did I get myself into? So we have it to where Red Claw and her men are to make their way through this strange looking like vehicle that is to equal to the train speed, and they are to jump on to the train. And we have Batman that awesomely comes through here in some like glider as if he's Kite Man, and then drops onto the train. And so we go on, we have Batman who's meet up with Red Claw, and he's like, wait a minute, like, you're a woman? And Red Claw's like, well, of course I'm a woman. Like, yeah. Like, I have to be the exact opposite of you, Batman. And so, like, we go on, and Red Claw is to capture the plague, the viral plague. I don't know why we have to have a viral plague, but it is what it is. I guess a plague isn't good enough. You have to have it be viral. Like, this show was going viral when it first came out. Anyways, so we have Red Claw, who is to have this helicopter come out of nowhere, and is to tell Batman that, like, hey, like, do not come any closer, Batman, or I will drop this plague, and it will kill a number of people. So, like, stay your distance. Like, do not call my bluff. I will kill everyone, and myself if need be. And so Batman is just like, okay, like, just kind of do whatever you need to do. So Red Claw is to go onto this helicopter and get away, and so now Batman is to realize that Red Claw is to have this plague, and that's all he can do. So, transition us on here. Hopefully this is the perfect transition for this episode, because eventually, within episode 2, I get a little bit foggy of what happens, because a lot of, like, the same kind of scenarios, and I have to kind of piece together them or figure them all out. So we go on, and we have it to where Bruce is to meet up with Selina Kyle. They're going on their date like it seemed like it was going to happen finally this time around. And so we have both Bruce and we have both Kyle driving their way. And all of a sudden there is this red car that is consistently smashing into Bruce's and Selina's. And I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, normally in every single time that I've ever seen Bruce in a car, usually he's never really driving. Usually it's Alfred driving, and whoever is usually in the back seat. But in this coincidence, we have it to where Bruce is driving. Like, I understand a lot of people go on and mention about the whole, like, in The Dark Knight Rises, where Bruce Wayne is driving the Lamborghini, or, like, I get that there could be, like, some scenarios at some point where, like, Bruce is to be driving a car, especially when you go on and you go into the beginning of the Batman Returns animated movie, where you have him driving this race car. So, like I guess that kind of is to be a goof. But anyways, so we have it to where Bruce is to go on and consistently be smashing into this red car, consistently smashing. So we go on and have Bruce that is to kind of squeal this car and is to play chicken with this red car. And so this red car goes and drives off this bridge and is to fall to its absolute death, killing these people. Batman doesn't care about these people's death, thinking that they're possibly going to drown or whatever. He's just like, no, like, they deserve to die. That's horrible! This is a kid show! What are you saying? I don't know. So we go on and we have Bruce and Selina who drive off, and Selina is asking Batman, or asking Bruce, like, how did you learn to drive like that, Bruce? And he's like, well, I've seen a lot of Grand Prix, and maybe at some point I might enter. Like, eventually we see in the animated movie that I just mentioned, Batman Returns, where eventually Bruce is to be risking his life as a much more older Bruce Wayne, and then eventually deciding that he needs the cape and cowl more so than he would like to believe. And that animated story is so dark, but like just so like there's something about it that was just so cool. Maybe not everything, but just bits and pieces of it were just like, oh man, like female Robin, and like there was just a bunch of like parts in there that I was like, this is cool. The whole like Batman Joker fight out, that was, but everything else is kind of really getting interesting. But so, anyways, we after that moment between Selena Kyle and Batman, so then we go on and we have Bruce who is to make his way home, and that's when we get the other hair that is to be on Bruce's clothing. And so then we have it to where, of course, Bruce is to realize that Selena Kyle is Catwoman. So we have it to where Bruce is to run off to make it to Selena Kyle's place. And we have it to where, of course, Catwoman is to run off, realizing that her life is at risk right now and that she should go on and try to take down Red Claw and her people at this facility that she is to go on and track down. So we have it where Batman is to make it to Selena Kyle's place and is to only see Maven there. And so Batman is like, shh, like, your life might be at risk. Like, where's Selena Kyle? Like, oh, she's already left. And so Batman is going like, well, do you have a safe place that you can go to? And she's like, well, yeah, of course. And he's like, well, go there. Like, I need to go on and I need to save Selena Kyle. And Maven's like, oh, so you know that Selena Kyle is like, yes, I know. Like, so we go on and we have Batman, who is to also make his way to this facility that Catwoman, of course, is to be in. So when Catwoman is to knock down this one man, and then is to go her way in through this facility to see this lion there, she is to make her way through this facility to then go after Red Claw and all of these people. And come to find out, we have at one moment where Selena Kyle is making her way through this place, and then there's two men with guns that are almost going to take down Catwoman here. Batman flies in, knocks their heads together, the old-fashioned way of knocking two guys' heads together to take them out. And so alarms are going off, Batman and Catwoman are running out of this facility, and all of a sudden Cage locks them in. And so Red Claw is like, oh, like, we meet again, Batman and Catwoman. Like, the very, like, cliche-ish, like, like, kind of re-entry of a villain that they've, like, seen again in another episode. So we now have it to where Batman and Catwoman are tied up, and we have it to where Red Claw is like, well, like, I'm just going to use this viral plague on you two to just kill you off here. And so Red Claw is deciding to go on and, like, escape this facility while this plague is eventually going to be released to Catwoman and Batman. And so Red Claw is trying to get into this helicopter, trying to get the heck out of there. So we go on, and Batman is thinking, like, well, if there's only a way that, like, these ropes were a little bit looser, I can be able to just figure a way out of here. I'm like, don't you have, like batarangs and all kind of stuff that just flies at your butt that you can just snap these ropes? Come on, this is freaking Batman we're talking about. He should be able to get out of everything. And I mean everything. Handcuffs, rope, like the jaws of life crunching on him. He should be able to get out of it. He should be the Houdini of everything. So But instead, we have Catwoman, who is to jump in and save the two of them by using her claws to have it to where she is to like rip these ropes, and then Batman's like, like now I can break free. We also had the one cool moment where Catwoman was fighting against Batman and using her claws, and Batman in I think the first episode was going on like, well, I'm gonna have to learn how to file those down now, aren't I? So we go on, and so we have Batman that is telling Catwoman to get out of here because he's gonna like neutralize the viral plague. So what he does is he goes on and he just puts gasoline all over this facility from this gas tanker, and then is to go on and jump into this gas tanker with this grenade, and then he starts like pouring this gas on, and then he throws the grenade behind him, and then the whole facility goes up as Batman is driving this this gas tanker through this door, smashes through it, and then we have of course Red Claw, who realizes like, all the work that I did all for nothing, boo hoo. So we have Red Claw that is all upset that Batman blew up this whole facility, as well as like blowing up this tanker and whatever, because fire and fire. So we have to where Catwoman is taking on Red Claw, and so both of them are fighting it out, duking it out. And so what ends up happening with a Red Claw is that Catwoman ends up having a lion that comes to her aid, and then this lion kind of gets on top of Red Claw. And so again, we have it to where, of course, Catwoman is to blow a kiss to Batman for saving her for the millionth time within 2 episodes. And then, of course, Catwoman is to end up disappearing. So, but, like, we have it to where Batman has her address. He has her number. So, he's gonna tweet her and just be like, I'm coming for you. So, Selina is to make her way home. And we have to where, of course, Batman is to know where Selina lives. And so we go on and have to where it's like Selina's like, oh, well, like, I guess you've caught me. And like Batman is like, well, you have no idea how much. And so like we have to where Batman is to cuff Catwoman and is to turn her in. And so yeah, like that's how like episode 2 is to just end. So now we get on to episode 3. Like I'm as much as possible trying to rush through these episodes so I can get within less than an hour of talking about all these, so I can get them all done and out of the way. So within episode 3, in the beginning of episode 3, we of course have Gotham Air. And we have Kevin Conroy that is starting out this episode as a different character. Kind of like how Michael Rosenbaum in the Justice League episodes, if you guys know Lex Luthor from Smallville, like he went on in the Justice League and he would play all these kind of smaller parts, like these random kind of characters, and eventually you would catch Michael Rosenbaum doing a lot of these other voices. And then at some point he would go on in animated movies and he would play these kind of like small parts and eventually do the voices for like for scarecrows or something like that, like little like openings of certain movies, so to kind of keep Michael keep doing work. So we go on, and in the beginning of this we have Gotham Air, where we of course have Gotham Air. We have one of the guys in the blimp that are saying that they're seeing this like radar blip. And the guy's like, well, I don't see anything. Like, I think we're fine. And so the guy's like, well, okay, but I saw something. It's like, okay, sure, we'll believe you. So we go on, and then we transition to this pharmaceutical lab, because that seems to be like where this guy continues to attack within this episode. So we go on, and we, of course, have this security guard that is trying to, on tape, record possibly this commercial that he's to probably hand off to radio about a guy trying to learn how to become a broadcaster at his leisure, and that maybe anybody else would want to go on and eventually want to learn how to do that also from him. And so he's doing this on tape, and he's trying to figure out the perfect words and the perfect company to call himself. He's like, you know what, that sounds good, that sounds good. All of a sudden, we end up having the security guard being attacked by a thing that we don't exactly see. And so immediately on the newspaper, slapped on there is like, this man was attacked by a bat. And they're thinking like, oh, this is Batman. Like, he's going on and attacking security guards. How could he? So we then go on and have it to where Batman is to take a personal interest in this case. He's to go on and find some hair samples of this man bat, and eventually is to be able to record this sound of this man bat. And so while he's off doing that, we have it to where, of course, Commissioner Gordon and Bullock are going to this judge, and so Bullock is to want to hire a task force. If you guys know any Batman story, you'd always know that there's always some Batman task force that is either run by Gordon or somebody who is to be like connected to Gordon, and they never work. Go on and watch Batman Year One. There's a task force that looks very familiar to this episode, and it feels like the events are very similar. I really like Batman Year One, especially the beginning, where Bruce is going on and being kind of high above the clouds on this airplane, and he's talking about that you can't see, like you can't see the evil, like you can't see the like the villain, like you can't see all that carnage and heartbreak and all that stuff from way up where. Like, I'm paraphrasing, but he says something similar to that. So we go on into this story, and we have Bullock wanting to get this task force, and the judge is going on saying, like, you know what, like, we have the money for this. Like, Bullock, like, go on and have your task force. Because the Commissioner Gordon is just thinking, like, what a waste. Like, no, like, we don't need this, because we have it to where, of course, the task force is Batman. And so, because Gordon has gone on and relied on Batman so much so, to just be like the extra help, that they don't need like an extra team of people. They just need one Batman. So you would think at some point that the police force would just be tossing Batman some bucks. Just be like, hey man, like thanks for the help. Here's some money. We don't know how rich you are because we don't think you're a billionaire, but here's some money. Like, or they would go on and be how like kind of like Punisher Warzone was, where a lot of the cops would just go on and just kind of cover for Batman a lot, and eventually just like help him out consistently. But anyways, so we have it to where Bullock is to get what he needs, and so we have also where Harvey Dent is in this room as the DA, and I'm like, yeah, this is setting up for eventual Two-Face, like it's gonna happen. So we have it to where Bullock is talking to Harvey, and eventually, like, they're having their moment. We have Two-Face is flipping this coin, so that's a cool thing that eventually we'll see somewhere down the road of Two-Face, because obviously it's gonna happen. So we go on, and so Bullock is to have this task force, and so we eventually have it to where Batman is to make his way to Phoenix Labs to eventually get a bunch of like evidence and stuff like that. So we have it to where Bullock and Commissioner Gordon are making their way to where Batman is to try to take him down. And Commissioner Gordon is telling Bullock, it's like, well, hey, like, there is another man that fits the description of Batman who is infiltrating another pharmaceutical facility. And so Bullock, like, how can one man be in two places at once? So it's like, ha 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 ha, like, I'm gonna rib on you. So we have to where Batman is going up against this task force, and so Batman is to go on and take one of these men down, but it seems that he also has to turn around and save that man by going through and grabbing this man, grappling, swinging, and dropping him off right by where Bullock and both Gordon are. The task, the the task force guy goes on and he feels like he looks like the wind is knocked out of him, and he just kind of falls over. So we go on and we have, of course, where Batman is to go on and take all this evidence of these hair samples and the sound of this bat, and he is to go on and bring this to the Gotham Zoo, where he is to meet at first with a guy named Dr. Marsh, and eventually Francine Langstrom, and then eventually that will lead to Kurt Langstrom, who is actually the Man-Bat, who we find out. So we go on and we have it to where, of course, Bruce is say, it's like, well, hey, like, I have these bats in my chimney, and I kind of want to know what they are. Like, really, like, I have these hair samples, and I have this sound sample. Like, what can you tell me about them? So we have Kurt Langstrom that's saying, like, hey, don't worry, Bruce. Like, we'll, like, eventually get this all decoded for you right away. And so Bruce is like, well, hey, thanks. Like, appreciate it. Like, some funding will go your way if all this works out. So we go on and we have Batman, who is to be taking the sound and is to try to analyze it, and there's no sound that he can find it really be the match of. And so we go on and eventually have it to where, like, especially in this episode, I really couldn't exactly decipher the difference between Bruce's voice and Batman's voice. But it really seems like in this episode we could really tell, especially when Bruce is on this phone as Bruce Wayne, but then transitions back to Batman. He's like, yeah, like, all right. And I'm like, oh, okay, now I can tell the difference. To just be like, because Bruce is to always sound very, hi, how's it going? Hey, hi. And then, like, Bruce is like, yeah, now I'm down here in this register. So I could really tell the difference between the two voices, especially in this episode, where I couldn't exactly. In the first two, it kind of sounded like Batman has a cold through the early stages, because it was hard to get eventually that voice, because we had it to where Kevin Conroy had gone on to say that he wasn't like a voice expert right out of the gate, that there was some learning to go on and do, and they had to go on and go through like a crazy amount of different guys to all try to figure out the voice of Bruce Wayne, but they end up finally finding Kevin Conroy, and so, like, they just went off with that. So, because of course they would. So, because I'm sure with every single show or cartoon, like, they had to take, like, a million years to find the perfect guy, the perfect voice, and the perfect whatever. Because a lot of times, like, even in, like, Family Guy, when Seth Green was to go on and, like, do the voice that he does for Family Guy, it came from a very bizarre-ish place that came from some, like, actor who used to sound like a certain way, but then, like, they had to morph it into a much younger version of that character, and so on and so forth. But anyways, pushing on. So we go on and we have Batman, who is to go on and get the intel from Dr. March. And so he is to mention that really the samples and the sounds are to be from two different bats that are all fighting in his chimney, and that eventually when it'll come down to the transition of winter, that these bats will eventually leave his chimney, it'll all be okay. And so Bruce is like, oh, well, thanks for that information. And so we have it where Batman's in the Batcave and he's realizing that, like, yeah, like what they're telling me is a lie. Like, there's something up about these guys and they're not telling me the whole story here. And since these guys are bat specialists, like I know I went to the right people. So, because when Batman is to go on and analyze this via the supercomputer of saying like, well, are these just two bats both like together? And we have the supercomputer that's like, no, this is not the sound of either one of these bats. And the Batman's like, all right, well, so we go on and we have Kurt, who is to again uh, really be like having the thirst for this medication to turn himself into Man-Bat, and so he is to start to consume this Phoenix Lab medication and is to go off to wait till he is to transform into this monster yet again. So while that's happening, we have Batman who slips his way into Kurt Langstrom's laboratory and is to see the Phoenix Lab medication. He's starting to put two and two together, like, like there must be someone that must be the Man-Bat with inside here, and so now I have to go on and figure out who that is. The mystery afoot. And so all of a sudden we go on and we have Kurt Langstrom that makes it back into his lab and just be like, oh, hey, Batman. And so now since Kurt is to be caught, he then is to go on and change into the Man-Bat and is to tell Batman that there had been a number of things that he had put within inside his body over time, but then eventually it seems that this monster was to eventually just be brewing within inside of him. It's kind of like the very first original Hulk movie, where eventually we go on and we have like so much brewing inside this thing already that the gamma rays just eventually just like made this guy into the Hulk because he already had so many things inside of him already. So we go on and we have it to where, of course, Francine is to open the door, realizing that possibly Kurt is the Man-Bat, and then Man-Bat is to turn and realize, oh, Francine is to see me as this monster. So we have it, of course, where Man-Bat is to then fly off, and Batman is to use his grappling gun to hook onto Man-Bat. So now we go on and we have Gotham Air that is going on, and same old two cops as before. And they're saying like, well, yeah, I see this radar like blip again. And the other cop is like, yeah, you say that all the time. But then all of a sudden we go on and we have Man-Bat that smacks into this blimp, and then Batman is smashing, breaking this glass. And so like, well, I guess you're right this time. So we go on and we have the police that are after, of course, this freak and Batman, this Man-Bat and Batman. So Bullock is racing off to this helicopter, and we have Commissioner Gordon that's like, oh no, like, you're not going this time, Bullet. I was tempted to just fire you, but the mayor wouldn't allow it, so I'm gonna go on, and I'm just gonna go, like, see whatever this is. So we go on, and so Batman is to go on and be dragged by Man-Bat to the point of them going through eventually this kind of unbuilt building that houses all these beams like stacked, ready to eventually put a building together. So we go on and we have Batman that is to use his grappling gun as this kind of rope that he can just kind of hold Man-Bat to get him from flying away. So maybe Batman could have some temporary like time to just kind of breathe a little bit. But then Man-Bat goes on and realizes that he's being like kind of tugged here, and so he goes right back to where Batman is, and to realize like, yeah, I'm gonna go on and eat you. So we have to where, of course, Batman is grappling on to Man-Bat and is trying to like choke him out, And so it seems that Batman is to go on to see that there's starting to be like buildings and stuff that are going to be coming up soon. So we have to where Batman is to cover the eyes of Man-Bat. And I'm like, wait a minute, like doesn't bats have like a radar sense? Like, haven't we seen in like Batman Forever where like the whole joke about being as blind as a bat because bats have like this radar sense and sound wave and whatever. So but anyways, we have Man-Bat who smacks into this part of this building and is to be knocked unconscious, and so Batman is like, oh thank God, like I finally was to take down this monster. So the serum is to drain out of Kurt Langstrom, and so we just have it to where Batman is to go back to Gotham Zoo to give Kurt back to Francine, and I'm like, wait a minute, like, shouldn't this guy be going off in cuffs? But I'm probably thinking of it like more than likely Batman, like when Man-Bat turned back into Kurt, like there was no way for him to kind of sell this whole thing. So really, it was just kind of hoping that I guess like Batman would just turn Kurt to Francine, and Kurt would hopefully uh, like go into rehab or just kind of go on and restrain himself from eventually again becoming Man-Bat. I'm assuming that won't be the case. So, with that said, that's just how these episodes leave off. So I think I'm going to leave off also so I can get that out of here. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about these episodes. Also, if there's anything that I've forgotten about within the spoiler, let me know in the comments below. It was very hard for me to go in a cryptic-like sense about Batman the Animated Series because of how great it is, and so I was just like, I don't know what I can really say that isn't just thumbs up, positive, enjoy this show. I know at some point there might be a filler episode here in somewhere, but I'm enjoying the series so far. So with that said, I think I'm going to get out of here. Bye, buddy. Bye, buddy.